There's not really a straightforward path to learning that, and that's what I was really, I guess I was taken aback by that, because I was like, well, that's what I want to do. So a few weeks ago, I shared a video where I was explaining what my mission is, and that is to support, enable, and promote crafts. The kind of like remaining aspect that I hadn't sort of addressed at the time was what has my path been? You know, in what way does that make me suitable to embark on this journey and to kind of explore this topic, but also kind of giving you, I guess, an overview of why I think this project is needed. So that's what I'm going to be attempting to do today, and I guess through that you will learn a lot more about what my professional and educational path has been up until now. So I'm tempted to sort of maybe wind it back to a few years ago, my sort of way into the interiors industry. At the time, I was working at the World of Interiors, and in the evenings I was studying a master's at Birkbeck, and it was a master's in history of art, but I think it was very much informed by my day job, you know, because I was, I very much sort of delved headfirst into the interiors world. Then, you know, to me it made sense anyway to kind of align my studies with that, and align my studies with my obsession. So basically my dissertation topic, I wanted it to be to basically look at historic interiors and look at how people approached restoring historic interiors. And I don't know why, but I thought it was going to be a really sort of like almost like a kind of scientific kind of project, which I know sounds really naive, but I thought there was going to be like a step-by-step approach of like things you should do when you're faced with a historic interior project. But the reality of it is that there's a lot of context. You know, are you looking at a private project, in which case you have the private clients, the person who's paying for it, who has the budget, who obviously has their own like inclination and tastes. There's also the interior designer who they choose. So, you know, they're going to choose someone with a particular taste, with a particular approach, with particular training. And there's also, you know, even sort of local planning authority, you know, all of these things, all of these factors really vary from project to project. And then if you look more at sort of, you know, museums, historic houses, etc., which is, you know, granted it is a lot more academic, but even then, you know, there's still the questions of budget. There's also going to be questions of, you know, nowadays we engage a lot, as we should, with the community and, you know, what does the local community want for this space and how to use it. And there's even things around interpretation and around, you know, okay, well, let's say it's a Georgian interior. Well, there might have been multiple different sort of like generations that have taken over this interior and decorated it. So to what period do you restore it to? So again, it's not sort of, there's not a black and white kind of approach to these sorts of things. And so in the same way that there isn't a black or white approach, well, there isn't a sort of like straightforward path to learning these things. And so where I expected a really sort of like structured dissertation, and I thought I was going to be able to, you know, pick a couple of case studies and sort of study them diligently and maybe kind of cross-reference them or whatever, I ended up with something that was really unacademic in a way, and that was really kind of studying personal approaches to interpreting historic interiors. And what coincided with that was the pandemic. So of course I didn't have staff from historic houses were sent on furlough and public libraries were closed, etc. So I did have to adapt my project heavily towards speaking more with interior designers and private projects. Obviously that also, you know, changed the scope quite a bit. But I think what really came out of this for me is I contacted some interior designers, and by all means I was sort of Are you all right, sir? You a bit bored? Yeah, okay. I sort of set my sights quite high, I guess, because I was working at the World of Interiors. I was sort of exposed to like the very finest interior designers, etc., the very top of the industry. And so I had a sort of like short list of the very best professionals, and I sort of got in touch with them, sort of feeling a little bit hopeful at the same time, thinking, well, who the hell am I to be getting in touch with these people hoping for a reply? But I was very lucky, and I got 3 positive replies of, interior designers who were willing to help me with my dissertation. And one of them is Caroline from Hotspur Design. I mean, she's basically been a mentor ever since, and she also runs historic decoration alongside her interior design practice. She runs that with Oliver Garish. Together, basically through historic decoration, they put on courses for how to approach historic interiors, and suppliers, etc. They're very generous with their knowledge. But one of the things that I was trying to explore through my dissertation, and I guess it wasn't necessarily part of the dissertation itself, but it was sort of for myself on the sidelines of writing, I was also sort of keeping an eye out for that sort of information, is how did those interior designers come across the knowledge? How did they develop that knowledge? Was it a course? Was it through books, etc.? And, again, we're so used to if you want to be a doctor, there's a very sort of deliberate path that you follow. But with interior designers working in the context of, listed buildings, etc., or, working with craft, there are interior design courses out there, but, they teach you the project management side of things. They teach you about suppliers that have sort of ready to sell products, and teach you the sort of softwares, etc., that you need, including sort of like digital drawing, obviously, is very important. So, you get a very solid foundation through those courses. But I'm looking at interiors where everything is done bespoke, and you need to have a huge knowledge of materials. You're not buying a product, you're actually designing a product and embarking on a project where you're going to be working alongside craftspeople, and it's in your best interest to not be embarking on that with no idea how those materials will work when they interact with other materials. So it's there's not really a straightforward path to learning that, and that's what I was really I guess I was taken aback by that, because I was like, well, that's what I want to do. I want to work on historic properties. I want to work with also with new interiors, but where it's sort of really sort of maximalists, bespoke, crafts-led kind of interiors. And I just didn't see an obvious path to that. And I think Caroline has been instrumental in helping me, because she's always been very encouraging of, okay, well, see that as a long-term project and keep developing yourself. And so I guess that's why, other than wanting to promote, enable and support crafts, there's also that kind of selfish reason for doing this project, is that I want to learn about all of these different materials. So, whether it's stone carving or stained glass or, joinery, the list goes on, but these are all the sort of things that I really, really want to learn. And I guess the best way to explain it is, if you might not be familiar with the work of William Burgess. He was a designer in the Victorian era. All of his work really portrays a really deep understanding of historic design and what came before him, but also of materials. Even things like, at one point there's sketches of a chalice, and it's, metal work with glass, with gemstones, etc., and and the engraving and this and that, and his sketch really shows just how much of a deep understanding he has of how these materials will meet one another, and what it gives information to the craftsman who is going to be making that commission. And if I wanted to do that now, I don't think I would have the knowledge, and it will take me many years. to get to that point, and it is quite ambitious to want to get to that point. I mean, William Burgess was a genius, but that's ultimately what I want to do. I want to be able to, really effectively work alongside craftspeople to, consult and design on really special projects. And that's why, all of these conversations I'm having with makers are incredibly interesting, because it's, helpful for me to be able to learn, okay, well, if someone wants to commission you, what are things that they would need to know? And, can I understand more about your process? Because really those are the things, I don't necessarily need to know how a carver holds a chisel, but I do need to know about like the lead time and about what things can make the process, easier, etc. So it was now 5 years ago when I was doing this dissertation. And through that process, I realized I basically needed to adopt a sort of like patchwork approach to learning, and, that it was most likely that I was going to have to find sources of information in lots of different shapes. And so that's kind of what I have done. So at the time I was working at the World of Interiors and I was finishing my master's, and then through both work and short courses, I have continued to educate myself in various topics. So I joined the Furniture History Society, the Decorative Art Society, and the Art Workers Guild. And those have been an incredible source of learning for me, whether it be through visits or lectures or just, talking with others in and around the field of, interiors or antiques or historic houses, crafts, etc. I then, in terms of short courses I've taken courses with the Attingham Trust. I did a course on London houses, another one on arts and crafts. These really kind of add to my portfolio of knowledge. I have also done, last summer actually, I did a course with Create Streets, and that was all about vernacular architecture. And I think that's a really interesting thing too, because the more I understand about architecture, the better I am going to be at collaborating with architects, and that's, another really important aspect of things. I'm currently applying actually for some courses with Interbau, which is a sort of worldwide organisation trying to promote learning in traditional architecture. So that is something I'm actively pursuing. I've also done courses with I think it's called Oxford University's Continuing Education Department. So I did one on the culture of the English country house, and more recently I've been doing one on the design of Gothic revival. So, just constantly trying to find ways of adding to what I know. And then, of course, as can be expected, I've been studying at KLC, doing a certificate in residential interior design. So that's something that is ongoing at the moment. On the work front, I've also been trying to continually sort of push myself. So after I left World of Interiors, I worked for Ottoline, who is a wallpaper and fabric designer. And that was really great in terms of, I was interacting with designers and seeing what kind of questions were coming up from them when they were ordering, fabrics and wallpapers. And also in terms of learning, like from Ottoline, what are, the considerations that she's got as a designer, and how do you go about sourcing the materials that you're going to be working with, etc. So that was really, really great. After that, I went to work at Sterling Studios. It's a decorative arts workshop, and they work in a wide range of materials, including gesso, lacquer, scagliola, antique mirror, cast glass, iglomise, gilding, paint effects, leather as well. I mean, basically you name it, they do it pretty much. And that was incredible, because I think that was really, in a way, that was all the stuff that I'd been wanting to learn during, when I was doing my dissertation, because I was the project manager there. So I had, I wasn't the maker, but I had to learn quite a lot about the materials and in what context they would work and what context they wouldn't work, what were the limitations. And my job was really to advise interior designers in a way. Like, people would come to me with, what their desired effect sort of aesthetic was, and then we would then advise on the best sort of material to serve that purpose within the parameters of the project. So that was a really fascinating job for me from a learning perspective. And then now something which is really lovely is, after years of Caroline mentoring me, we're now working together on, she's got a few projects going on at the moment, which is sort of aligned as the perfect opportunity for us to work together. And she is so generous with her knowledge, and something I really, really appreciate is that, and I think is quite unique for an interior designer, and why her and I are so aligned, is that she's very open with her knowledge, with who she works with who she collaborates with. When I told her what Artfully Crafted was about, she, sort of like took a folder from her shelf and said, oh, here's a list of all the craftspeople I've ever worked with, hope that's helpful. And for me, that was really amazing to be working alongside someone who totally gets what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I feel very, very lucky to work with her. Yeah, I hope it gives you an overview of, what my path has been the last few years, and why I kind of need to go on this journey to take myself to the next step. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope it wasn't too rambly either. And rambly or rambling? I don't know. And I hope you've enjoyed Drake's presence. And I'm hoping that we'll have more opportunities for varying the content. Every 5 or so maker interviews, to maybe visit a different kind of place together, maybe a school of traditional crafts, or maybe a historic house, and maybe I can, in that context, I can comment on the decorative arts that have been put to use in that space. So yeah, and I hope that along the way we will be learning together. So thank you so much for following along, and please do subscribe to the channel, and engage with this video by liking it, commenting and sharing. It means a lot. And see you next week.
Whenever you're ready.
Yeah. It's so clickbaity to include my dog, isn't it?
Yeah, but it works. So.
Do you think we're going to have extra followers because of you? Probably.